Hi, I'm Kimberly Thalkin of Love First, and today we're going to be talking through part one of three videos. So, part one is how to heal from the loss of a pet. Part two will be what our pets teach us from heaven. And part three will be how to communicate with our pets in heaven. So, if you are someone who's going through the grief and the loss of a pet, then I'm giving you a big virtual hug wherever you may be. And I'm just sending you so much love because I know it is one of the most difficult things that we can go through in this lifetime. It certainly was for me. But I'm here to tell you that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And that light can be experienced and felt and seen probably a lot faster than you can imagine. And in today's video, I'm going to show you how. So, when we lose a pet, it can be a very traumatic experience, as I know it was for me. In fact, this video is done in honor of my little girl, Lexi Lou. She passed away on November 15, 2020. So it's been about 2 months now since she's passed. And I know it was one of the most difficult things that I'd ever been through in my life. And it was certainly one of my greatest fears. And so when she passed, it was like I was faced to move through one of my greatest fears. Now, what I want to make sure that I share is that as painful as losing a pet can be, it's also one of the greatest gifts that we can be given in this lifetime too. And that is because our pets assist us in our own ascension of consciousness, which when we ascend or expand in consciousness, it's when we are living from our highest place, which means that we're fully open to receiving and experiencing the greatest levels of love and also the deepest understanding of life and ourself in our life and those around us. And it's when we are inspired to create. So we will receive a lot of inspiration and creativity and joy and peace and just really all of those beautiful things in life that we all want to experience. And that is actually what the passing of our pets can help us to achieve within ourselves. And so let me start by saying this because it's not all doom and gloom, and there's a lot of beauty that can come with it too, which I'm going to go through, especially in the second video where I talk about what our pets teach us from heaven. So when we go through loss or grief, there's going to be all of these emotions, obviously, that come up. Great sadness, maybe depression, just feelings of a tremendous amount of loss, emptiness inside, loneliness, and all of those things that come along with this type of experience. And it's even going to trigger other things in you, other emotions in you that you may not have been aware were there, or that you haven't felt in a long time, that might come up unexpectedly. And so that's just a part of the process as well. For example, for me, when this happened, obviously I was going through all the grief and the loss and the sadness, deep sense of loneliness, but it also triggered a deep-rooted emotion in me, which is the feelings of being left behind. And it's a very painful experience, which, I understand the root of it and I've done some work around it. But when this happened and those feelings came up, I didn't realize that they were still inside of me. And so this experience will do that for us too, is trigger emotions that we weren't even aware were there or still there, or that we haven't felt in a long time. Now, when these emotions come up, it's really important that we allow them to be, that we be with them, that we acknowledge them, that we be with them, and that we express them. And when we do this, we can move that energy out. Because what happens is that energy is inside of, so those emotions, which are lower vibrational emotions, are inside of us. And just like plumbing in a house, when there's a lot of grease in the pipes, the plumbing shuts down. It's not working, it doesn't work as efficiently, or the plumbing doesn't work at all. And that's kind of what happens to us when we suppress emotions, when we ignore them, when we bypass them, when we turn the other way, when we pretend. All the things that sometimes we do so that we don't have to feel them, they actually they clog our own plumbing up inside, because they're lower vibrational emotions. And so we want to then move those emotions, move that energy out of us. So what I want to say is, do whatever it is you need to do to do that. And whatever it is that might look like, whether it's crying, whether it is for me, I'll be honest. One day I was home by myself, and I crawled up on the couch, and I just cried my eyes and my heart out. And I was screaming at the top of my lungs. I was in so much pain. And when I was doing that, it was almost like, wow, I can't believe I'm doing this. But I also knew that it was really important for me to do that so that I could move that energy out. And that was the way that I did that. So however it is you choose to do that, if it's, punching a pillow, if it's screaming too, then allow yourself the gift of doing that for you as well. And be really kind and gentle with yourself during this time. If you need to take a couple of days off and just, sit in your pajamas all day and eat what you want and take hot baths and, watch your favorite shows, then do that for you. For me, I took a couple of days off. There was no way I was going to be, able to function in, with the emotions that I had inside and what it was that I was feeling. So do what it is you need to do to be kind to yourself. Give yourself that time, and also be with those emotions and move them out. So move that energy out. Now, when you do this, what begins to happen within you, because when we experience loss, it is actually going to be an activation for raising our own consciousness. Surprisingly enough, we don't think of it in that way, but that's what it does. Sorry, the light is a little, that's what it does for us. And I'm going to talk to you about, I'm going to share with you how it does that, because again, when we expand in consciousness, that's when really a lot of like beauty and magnificence moves into our experience. So the first thing that happens, when you go through something traumatic like that, is that it brings us to a place of 0 point within ourselves. So 0 point is when we are experiencing and living from the purest place, that's us. And therefore our perspective matches that. And the best way that I can describe it is like layers of an onion, peeling off, right? The layers of all it is that is not us gets stripped away. So anytime, it is that we were any place within ourselves where we were protecting ourselves, where we had our walls up around our hearts, where we were closed off, any unconscious programming it is that we're holding within ourselves, old realities that we're clinging on to, any unconscious programs of, you know, I'm not good enough, or I'm not enough, or, you know, anything like that. All of those things start to fall away, start to peel away like layers of an onion, because the shock to the system when we go through trauma will do that for us. So it brings us back to center again, and really to a place of 0 point within ourselves, which means that we are then experiencing the purest part of us, and then our perspective will match that. Now, that's not an easy place for us to get to on our own, because our human side will resist that. But when we have an experience like great grief or loss, then that is a trigger or an activation for this process to initiate. And that is certainly what I noticed within myself, because it's like we're stripped away of everything in that moment when that loss happens. And so all we can do is feel what it is we're feeling and try and make sense of what is happening. And and it's in that process that we're brought back to center again. Now, when when trauma hits us like that and all of these layers start peeling away, that is also a process of surrendering, because we can't even hang on anymore, because we're we're trying to process the grief it is that we're experiencing and the loss it is that has just happened. And so there, we don't hang on anymore. So when we're not hanging on, we're not resisting, which means that it's also bringing us to the present moment. Being in the present moment is one of the most freeing and liberating places it is that we can be within ourself and our experience. And so what I noticed when I lost little Lexi was that when I got the news that she had passed, because she wasn't with me, she was at my parents' house. I was moving into a new home and I was busy unpacking, and I wanted to leave her with my parents because she loved being there, while I got things done, and then I was going to go pick her up and bring her home. And one night I was sitting down to dinner with my family and the phone rings, and it's my mom crying hysterically on the phone that Lexi had died, that she had passed. And I was in such a state of shock. Of course, it totally caught me off guard, completely unexpected. And here I was left with this news, knowing that my little girl had passed. And so the shock that had come over me, I couldn't even cry because I couldn't even make sense of what was happening. It was almost like this can't be real. But yet it really was. And so from that point forward, all I could do was sit with that news and, start to move through the process. And I just felt like especially the next day, because it happened at night. And so of course I cried myself to sleep, but then the next day, I just I felt like I was naked almost, like everything had been stripped away. Even when that news came, it was just like everything just fell by the wayside. It was all gone. And I was brought to 0 point, and I was brought to the center of my being, and I was brought to the present moment, because that's all I had. And one night I was lying in bed. This is maybe two nights after I lost her, and I was up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I was like, oh my gosh, I am so present. I am the most present that I have ever been. I'm not thinking about anything in the past. I'm not thinking about anything in the future. All I can think about right now is is me in this moment. And it was at that point that I realized, wow, I am the most present that I've ever been. And when I stayed with that feeling, I was able to see the freedom and feel it, the freedom and the liberation that comes with being in the present moment. It was so liberating. I wasn't thinking about like her passing per se, or what had happened, or the phone call, or how she had passed, or what am I going to do now. It was just me at 3 o'clock in the morning in that present moment. There was no struggle. There was no resisting to what was. It was just being in that moment. And I was able to see the and feel the gift in that. And I thought, wow, oh my gosh, I'm the freest I've ever been within myself, because I wasn't caught up in unconscious programs, or this reality or that reality, or what this person said or did, or what am I going to do now about this, or how am I going to do that. It was just me, the purest place in me in this moment. And all I can say is that is one of the greatest gifts that you can experience in life. And that's what our pets will do for us. And that's what Lexi taught me about that experience too, which I'll get into greater detail in my second video. So it brings us to the present moment. And bringing ourselves to the present moment isn't something that we do well on our own, like in terms of the human side of us, just going, okay, I'm going to live in the present moment from this moment forward. We can do it only for so long until it is we've mastered that within ourselves, but that mastery comes definitely over time and a lot of awareness. And so it's not something that we oftentimes do, the human side of us, very successfully on our own. But that's what an experience like this will do for us. It'll give us the gift so that we experience what that's like, and we see for ourselves, and we see how much freedom it is. And then once we experience that inside, then we can be better at doing that for ourselves more and more and more. And so that when we do these things, right, and we're experiencing these things, we're in the moment, it's bringing us to 0 point, our hearts start to open. And our hearts will open when we experience that trauma. It's almost like that shock that hits the body, and we're not holding on anymore, and all we can do is surrender. Our hearts will open. When our hearts open up, that's when everything about us shifts and changes. That's when our life as we knew it is completely different from that point forward. So all of these things are happening at the same time, all together. So when our hearts open, then we're living more from 0 point, and we are living more in the now moment. We're seeing things from the highest place within ourselves. We're seeing things from a place of truth, and it's helping to bring in deeper levels of understanding to the situation at hand. So, for example, the way Lexi Lou passed was that she had drowned in my parents' pool. When my heart started to open, I could see from a place of truth that that wasn't an accident, that that wasn't a tragedy, that there wasn't something that, should have been done or could have been done to change the outcome. That in fact, the outcome was as perfect and divinely inspired as could be, divinely inspired by her, really. And that was the way in which her soul chose to exit this lifetime for her. and everything was just as it was supposed to be. When our hearts are closed and we're not connected in that way, we might place blame, blame somebody else for for what happened. We might stay in a place of feeling stuck inside. Maybe I wasn't, the best mom that I could have been. Maybe there's something I should have done differently. I should have had her here instead of at my parents, and none of that would have been true. And so it helps you to see things from a place of truth. Now, what all of this does too is that it'll shift your attention and your focus is completely redirected to a different place within yourself in the present moment. And that too changes everything, because the human side of us always wants to, take something and go off running in this direction. But when our hearts open and we are seeing things from a place of truth, we come right back to center again, and we see it for what it is. And we make peace of it within ourselves. Like, I had so much peace with the way she passed. Now, would it have been a way that I would have chosen? No. But I also see that it was divinely inspired by Lexi. And that's the way she chose. And I can honor that then from a place of truth within me, and know that everything happened just as it was meant to be. So no matter how it is your pet passed, whether it was through, a health experience, or, something like what happened with Lexi, or euthanasia, any one of those things, it was all divinely inspired by your pet. And so we can honor that and accept it and see the divinity in it. So these are very, very powerful experiences. And what happens then is that when you're in a place of surrendering, when you've just let go of everything because you just simply don't have it within you to hang on anymore, when it is you're experiencing the grief, you're moving that out. When it is you are in the moment, your heart is open, you're in the moment, and you're at a place of 0 point within you, that your human is no longer in control. And it allows the higher states of you, the higher aspects of you to come in and to integrate into your beingness, into your being, such that that's the place it is that you begin to live from. Which then, of course, changes life as you knew it to be. So you will experience the grief, and then you'll experience the expansion, because the grief is the activation for your expansion. And once you start to experience the grief, you move it out, you expand, you might feel more grief again, you move it out, you expand even more, and you go through this process that works kind of hand in hand, such that the grief activates the expansion and the expansion lessens the grief. So all of this is happening together, concurrently, to support the process and to support you. And guess who's behind all of this? Your soul and your pet. And your pet. That's how they help us. That's how they support us. That's how they're a part of our ascension and our own growth. Now, there are some notes that I have. I just want to make sure I haven't missed anything. So now, through this experience, it's like you will start to see, as you expand, the light at the end of the tunnel. And for me, when you are bogged down with grief and sadness and heaviness, it also makes it much more difficult for you to receive guidance from your highest levels, and also messages from your pet, because your pet is wanting to support you and love you through this too. So it may take a couple of days before you're in a place to where it is you can start to expand. Once you move out enough of the grief and the sadness from the loss, then it is you leave room in yourself to expand. And when you start to expand is when you can start to have the most profound experiences with your pet and also with your highest levels. So for me, it took me a couple of days, before I was in a place to see things from that place of truth, to open up to, connect with Lexi. Because she was there all along, but I was just so, heavy, like with emotions, that I wasn't able to make that connection. And so give yourself that time. It might take a couple of days before things start to level out a little bit and you begin to expand and you begin to feel better about, the circumstances at hand, which is exactly what happened for me too. And so I was able to experience that light at the end of the tunnel probably a couple of days into her passing, to the point where I was almost like I was feeling elated inside. I was feeling so much joy, so much elation, because well, she was spending nights with me. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and she was there with me, and she was teaching me and sharing with me what this experience was doing for me. And I knew from that point forward that it was like I started to get really excited of all that was to come in this new relationship that I was then going to have with her, and how she was going to be supporting me on my path from that moment forward. So she is literally, one of my guides now. And she's with me in the sessions it is that I do, the readings that I do. She teaches me all the time. She was with me. I spent nights where I didn't sleep because I was up all night with her, because she was there teaching me, sharing with me, all that this experience was meant to be for me. And your pets can do that for you too. Now, mind you, I do this work professionally, and I dedicate a lot of time to, readings and meditation and stuff. So I'm more connected, I'd say, than the average person. But it doesn't matter, because these experiences are also available to you too. And when you have them with your pet, it is the most amazing thing that you can experience with them. It's like a whole new relationship begins to emerge, and it can bring you the greatest levels of joy. So, for example, when my veterinarian called me to share her condolences with me and to say how sorry she was that Lexi passed, and this was maybe 3 or 4 days later. And when I was talking to her, she probably thought that I'd lost my mind, because I was so uplifted. There were no feelings of like sorrow in me. And I know that she felt that, or that she could hear that in my voice. I think she was preparing herself to really say, I'm so sorry. I know, what you're going through. And while she did do that, I do feel that she was surprised, because I wasn't in this state of deep sadness at that point. At that point, I'd expanded out, and I had had all the most profound experiences with Lexi, and I was just overcome with joy of what this new part of our journey and our relationship would be together. So that's what it is I want to leave you with here, is that, you'll move through the grief. And as you do that, your heart opens, okay? And everything starts to kind of shift when that happens, and you start to expand in consciousness. Greater peace and understanding will settle in, And then you'll move through grief again, and then you'll expand again. And all of these things, again, are working in support of one another and in support of you. And it's all being, it's overseen by your pet and also your soul working together during that time. So, because of that, it becomes very, very profound when you see it and understand it and feel it from that place. All right, so there is light at the end of the tunnel, and it can happen very, very quickly if you allow that for you. But you got to do the work first. You got to not be afraid to feel those feelings. Is when you do the work, that's when you are rewarded, so to speak, for doing that, for going into that place within you, for facing your fears, for facing those emotions. And that's when you are rewarded with the greatest levels of joy and the deepest levels of understanding. So I'm gonna leave you with that, and I'm gonna continue on with video number 2, which will talk then about the next step in this process of how your pets will teach you from heaven. And when that happens, it is amazing. It'll bring you to tears of joy. I promise you that. And that experience is available to you too. You do not have to be a psychic medium. You don't have to do the work that I do. All you have to do is be open and receptive to it. And I'm going to teach you how to do that in my third video of how to communicate with your pets in heaven. Thank you for being here with me today. And my greatest hope is that what I've shared with you today will move you through this process with the greatest amount of ease and the deepest levels of understanding, so that peace can you can restore peace within yourself and begin to develop the most beautiful, profound relationships with your pets in heaven.